Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on fluttered folk and wild, your new caught sullen peoples, half devil and half child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times mad plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace, fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch sloth and heathen folly bring all your hope to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread, go make them with your living, and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden, and reap his old reward, the blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of hosts ye humour, ours slowly toward the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent sullen peoples shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come now to search your manhood through all the thankless years, cold-edged with dear-bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers.
Imperialism is the policy of extending the rule or authority of an empire or nation over foreign countries, or of acquiring and holding colonies and dependencies. Starting in the late 18th century, European and American life had begun to change drastically. Starting with the Industrial Revolution in Britain, it modernized the manufacturing of goods, farming, and the handling of raw materials. Shortly after, Britain became a democracy. Industrialization sparked a high demand for raw materials and led to the colonization of Asia and Africa for these resources. This, as well as technological processes, boosted Europe and America's confidence and made them convinced they were superior, which later led to 2 world wars. Quite a few European countries such as Spain, Germany, France, Portugal, and Britain fought over land in Africa. We interviewed a British general and had them describe why they decided to create colonies in Africa.
What was your motivation for imperializing Africa?
I needed natural resources and raw materials for my people. As the 80s came around in factories in Manchester, there was a huge demand.
So what made you choose Africa to help you and your people obtain these resources?
Well, Africa had an abundance of natural raw materials such as gold, lumber, diamonds, and coal to take back home, and also it was great for trade routes.
Just before Europe dominated Africa, African people were divided into hundreds of linguistic and ethnic groups. A majority of groups carried on with their traditional beliefs, where some converted to Christianity or Islam. For 400 years, Africa's powerful army was able to keep Europe out of most of the continent, but the discovery of steam-powered riverboats in the early 1800s allowed Europeans to direct extensive expeditions into the interior of Africa. most of Europe had industrialized, there was a scramble for African territory. The Berlin Conference was held to negotiate the division of this territory. The country that took the most amount of land was France, conquering almost all of Western Africa and the entirety of Madagascar. Belgium took Central Africa, and Italy took pieces of East Africa. Britain got Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa. Germany took East Africa, a fragment of South Africa, and modern-day Cameroon. Portugal also got Eastern and Southern Africa. Spain received the smallest amount of land, which is a tiny piece of West Africa. Ethiopia and Liberia avoided colonization.
By the early 20th century, much of Africa, except for Ethiopia and Liberia, had been colonized by European powers. Africa faced many military invasions and diplomatic pressures. The British desire for natural resources, slave labors, and political dominance caused a variety of widespread racial discrimination and economic exploitation. There were few positive outcomes, but advances made in agriculture, the mining industry, and education were some of them. During the time of imperialism, the African death rate skyrocketed due to diseases such as sleeping sickness. The bite from a fly or parasite carrying the disease was fatal and deadly. Also, many African children had a hand cut off if they didn't do their work correctly or at all.
European colonization has created many lasting impacts throughout Africa. Dr. Oldbone is here to explain some of them.
My name is Professor Oldbone, and today I'm going to be discussing how the colonization of Africa has affected it today as a whole. African culture completely changed, with some nations fully adopting languages and cultural traditions from those who invaded. Left them unprepared for what was to come with invasions and wars and everything. They soon found what is known as an arguably worse form of slavery, which is where they were enslaved by inadequate technology, a poor economy, and an undefined cultural identity. Sadly, it also brought a widespread of discrimination and racism to the continent. More positive note, though, imperialism brought schools and hospitals to countries in need for the children for education, as well as railroads for transportation.
Stop. This is the real take. Okay, rolling.
Wait, I don't know what to say!
You're good?
Now. Okay, you're good.
I don't know what I'm reading.
Oh, yeah, Tam.
Wait, what am I saying?
We have to get something done today.
Okay. What was your motivation for imperialism? Okay.
You're just practicing right now, by the way.
Yeah, can we
Move your glass like more to the...